first off is one market first. Sounds easy, but the very first thing is focus on one city, one country, and do it well. So I'm going to be talking about scaling outside Canada, and the reason I'm going to be telling a story that's a few years old now. You can grow your business a lot of different ways. You know, you start off with a business idea, you focus on your model, and you start to grow that model, and you think about, gee, you know, should I be pivoting that model? Is it really growing as fast as I'd imagined? You can also look at, gosh, it's starting to get some traction. Should I go into new markets, and when? Or do I look at expanding, for example, HomeStars? Do I make it for cars, you know, reviews on cars, reviews on other things people are reviewing? So you can look at new segments. Or you can get to a certain level and think about acquisition. But ultimately, you're trying to grow. And these are a little bit more mature ideas when you're first starting your business. So I'm going to give you this example because I did try to get launch into the United States early on, and I failed. And it wasn't an epic failure per se, but it was a super big learning for us in our early stage. So I'm going to take you through that story and some of the key lessons I learned, and hope that you can apply some of them as you think about starting a business, or you're already in your business and you're thinking about how you want to continue to accelerate your growth. So a great quote from a prolific inventor: "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that it won't work." So, you know, people, I look back and it's easy to beat yourself up when you do have little or big failures. No one really documents them per se, and it would be great if more people documented what didn't work, and that was shared, because it's great learning. I mean, the biggest failure most recently, as I was thinking about this topic, was Target. Target, a massive success in the US. Who hasn't gone and driven 2 hours to Buffalo to go shopping there? And such innovative products back in the day. And when they came to Canada, they just thought this is going to be easy. You know, Canadians love Target. Well, the first mistake they made was they opened they purchased Zeller's leases from all across Canada and locked themselves into a launch that was massive. So they had to succeed because they already had all those leases and these locations already locked up. So pretty stressful launch. And if you ever read the Canadian Business article on it, it was a really interesting story. So I'm going to just tell you my lessons learned when we tried to go to the US, and I'm going to be covering this in my story. First off is one market first. Sounds easy, but the very first thing is focus on one city, one country, and do it well. Second is enough funding, critical. And lastly, if you're going into a new market, you've got to be local. So I'm going to cover those concepts off as I go ahead. So first off, I started HomeStars because I felt there was a real problem to be solved, and I lived through it. I lived through a renovation in the early 2000s, and went through it, and it was a major learning curve and a major experience, and there was no resources online. So there was word of mouth, and there was the phone book. So as I thought about it, I thought that, you know, from a homeowner perspective, you're spending an enormous amount of time and money on your home. Finding contractors is difficult. Word of mouth is hard. And the cost of failure, depending on the project, it just varies. So, and then I looked at it from the contractor perspective. And at the time, in the mid-2000s, traditional media was already starting to become more scattered and very, very, very expensive. Obviously, small businessmen and women could not afford it. And word of mouth is got a very limited range. So taking that, I first attacked HomeStars from the consumer standpoint. And that is the number one thing I wanted to solve was, who do you hire? So if you hire well, everything else will go well. So spent some time looking at the competitive set and the frame of reference. And at the time, I used this model. So I really dug these out of the depths of my hard drive to find some slides about how I looked at the world back then and how I started to look at developing HomeStars. So on the vertical axis was sites that were out there that were focusing on broad content, and at the top, deep content, very, very focused content in this contractor world. And then I looked at the horizontal, and I looked at content that was very static, editorial to rich. This is just the way we looked at it, and started to build up the model and the concept, built a website, was Toronto focused only, and Yellow Pages was very significant at the time. Their book was very prolific at the time, and there was some other sites in the US that were not in Canada, but they were on my radar. Angie's List, you've all heard of now. Service Magic has now become HomeAdvisor, and Yelp was just starting out. It was 2004 when they launched, so I was really looking at their site as well. So this was the very first HomeStars.ca site launched in Toronto, and it was just a handful of us, literally a small team. I had a salesperson selling, I had somebody working on the website, contractor designer, and I was doing the marketing. And a few months later, got a meeting with a venture capitalist and started building a business model. I got a term sheet. So pretty exciting stuff for me at the time. It was mind-blowing. And so having pitched it and honed it for several weeks, got the term sheet to invest $2 million. This VC was going to give me one for 25%. He wanted me to have another VC also put in money at 25%, so I was going to get $2 million. And I thought, wow. So went on a roadshow to secure the second half of the funding. That was the absolute, had to have that second. So I spent a lot of time getting to know the markets, and we had to go to the US. That was the game plan. So he and his team helped me build a model to go into 8 cities in the US. So it was really exciting days, and when you raise money, you have very little time to focus on the business. So 6 months later, we didn't close. It was pretty devastating. The term sheet expired, and I was left with not a lot of progress on the business because we were a pretty tiny team and no money. So I took that, and some would say, well, easy to quit. I wasn't going to quit because I believed in what we were trying to do, and I believed that, that we were really serving a really important need. There was a real problem in the marketplace. Homeowners, needed to hire well, and it was a really tough problem to solve. So went to friends and family, and so I struck out on my first base, went to friends and family in 2007, and parlayed the term sheet from the VC into a deal with some angels, because they were more sophisticated, and was able to close a round for about $500,000. So I'm telling you that because I took that idea of Canada, I was focusing on Canada, to US, 8 cities, and I had started to think, wow, we got to go for it. And the competitive landscape was really aggressive. So I said, well, if we were going to do 8 cities with 2 million, we can do 2 cities with $500,000. Just simple math. And we'd already done a lot of work in looking at various cities. We decided to choose Boston. It was on our time zone. It was a good size and scale. There was a home show there. We could launch in the fall of 2007. So we were really focusing on how to scale this business. Already had new designs for the site. In fact, so I found a screenshot where we had built the site with Boston and Toronto. So we were going to focus on Toronto still and go into Boston. And the other reason was, if we start to scale and get traction in these two markets, it'll be a lot easier to get funding the next round, because $500,000 is a starting place. So that's a little bit of the backdrop on going into Boston. The other thing is built a full business plan around it, hired a local community builder, so somebody in Boston, hired a salesperson to handle the phones. That person was in Toronto, and we completely revamped the site. So I found this slide on scaling up plan and product roadmap. We had a .ca site and had to get the .com domain, had to take the site into the .com. I'm not going to bore you into the details, but just imagine a team of 5 trying to do all this. We had a go-wide plan. I was very ambitious. And I came from large businesses, so I was not afraid to just go big or go home. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can get Toronto and Boston seated. There was a lot of activity going on in the marketplace at the time. Go-wide functionality, we started to look at rolling out in 2008, and then we were going to go deep with our functionality. So the strategic plan all sounded great on paper. So too much, and we failed. And it was fantastic learning experience. Had pro forma on Boston, had pro forma on Toronto, but really we tried to do way too much. It's hard to say no. It's hard to pare back originally big scale plans into small scale plans. We tried to do way too much. We didn't have enough marketing and sales for both markets. And looking through the financials, we didn't break it down by week to week, month to month. We just had, way too long-term thinking, and we didn't get traction. And a good definition of traction is, and it's really the only metric that anybody counts when you're given money, is traction is the rate at which you capture monetizable value from customers. These are the people that are paying you. And it was a great quote from Ash Mayura. I don't know if I'll pronounce his name correctly. He was worked with Eric Ries, who wrote The Lean Startup, and he's also written books on business models. Don't ask people what they think of your idea, only the customers matter. And don't ask customers what they think of your idea, measure what they do. It's a lot more software than there was back then to measure. I tell you, the tools we had in 2007 and 2008 were pretty basic. We had to build a lot of our software. So I'm going back in my 3 lessons learned. Number 3, I should say, is be local. So in Boston, what we did do right is we were on the ground, we were in a home show, we were gathering content, we gathered reviews, had a community builder really doing this social thing at the time. And we positioned ourselves as Angie's List, but free. And that really resonated with companies because they were having to get their clients to buy memberships to go write the review and to get, because that was really the only site that was starting to gather reviews in the home space. So we thought about our positioning, what was our frame of reference in that market. We didn't have a dedicated sales team on the ground. And I think that's a very important lesson learned. You need to have people on the ground that are absolutely focused on building your business in that market. Lesson number 2, going backwards, is have enough funds. If you're going to go into a new market, you got to think ahead as to how much you're going to need. Double, triple, because just like a home renovation, you think your kitchen's going to cost $20,000, it's probably going to cost $40 or $30. You're going to go over budget, and you want to, really make sure that you're, holding those funds tight, making sure you're thinking about and starting to even fundraise as you work on your traction. If you need funds, if you're already making money, great. And lesson number 1: build the one market first. One of the models that I love to use, and it's a book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. Has anybody read it in the room? It's written, 12, 15 years ago, but the principles are absolutely so clear cut. And it's a classic read on, why do some companies only grow at certain levels? They're good companies, they're solid companies, but their rates of growth are only marginal. And how do some companies make the breakthrough to high growth? And it talks about hedgehog concept and getting your flywheel growing. And getting your flywheel growing is really focusing on your one product and your one business model and your one market. Get that working first. Slack did it. If you have heard of Slack, it's a success story from a Canadian founder that founded Flickr and then went into find a whole new way of working with a communication platform that's used by companies and scaled it slowly with very small teams into bigger teams. And the other thing about good to great is this hedgehog concept of three concentric circles. You can talk about vision and mission and really the culture that you want to build. These are all great and really important. The three economic drivers of this flywheel, though, are based on what are you deeply passionate about, what can you be the best at the world at, and what drives your economic engine. So thinking about how you want to grow, because certainly you start with your one launch and how you want to grow, whether it's geographically, with other products, et cetera. This, if you can define it and evolve it over time, will help you and your team really shape what you're focusing on. And we did this exercise, and we continue to hone it at HomeStars. We focused on Canada. After the Boston debacle, we reared back. We focused only on Toronto. Then when we had enough traction, we focused on Vancouver, Calgary, all the key cities in Canada, Ottawa. So we are in the major markets now. And for us, it's connecting homeowners with the best home improvement professionals through our growing authentic and trustworthy content. So focusing on trusted reviews is core to us and helping you find the best. We don't serve all companies. We don't serve all contractors. We only serve the best. And we really do care deeply about it. I've been at this for 10 years, and I can still wake up and feel that there's so much more to do. I still feel that we have so much more to learn. I'm learning every day, and it's really it's exciting to be thinking about starting a new venture. So, and the last piece is the driving the economic engine. Is for us, it's the lifetime value of that best. So making sure that economically, we're making sure that companies that do pay us are getting value and they stay with us. Keeping it simple is harder than you think, and certainly it's harder as a lesson I've had to learn time and time again. Keeping it simple. My CFO, who started working with me a couple years ago, said, 1 in a row doesn't count, 2 points make a line, and 3 points make a trend. So I always remember if we have a great result, at one point, the next point, are we continuing to make that great result? And in the third month or the third quarter, are we seeing a trend? So, and it's hard to do, and it keeps us all ruthlessly focused on seeing those trend lines. And I look back, and even though we didn't scale to other markets successfully, what we did do is reach for the stars, because if you don't reach for the stars, and this is a line that Irene Rosenfeld, who I work with at Kraft, she now runs Mondelez worldwide. When you reach for the stars, you may not quite get one, but you won't come up with a handful of mud either. And I always remember her saying that, and it was inspiring for me to think about that as I grew the business.